Get out. That was all Vivian said. 2 words. She did not turn around in the driver's seat. She did not look at the girl in the rearview mirror. She simply reached back with one hand, unclicked the seatbelt, pushed the rear door open with the flat of her palm, and waited the way a person waits when they have already decided what is going to happen and are simply allowing the world to catch up. 8-year-old Lily Dawson stood on the shoulder of Highway 12 with rain already beginning to darken the canvas of her sneakers, and she watched the taillights of the silver sedan pull back onto the road. She watched them shrink. She watched them curve with the bend in the highway. She watched them disappear, entirely swallowed by the gray Montana afternoon like something that had never been there at all. She did not scream. She did not chase the car. She did not cry, not yet. She simply stood there, with the strap of her backpack clutched in both hands, her knuckles white against the faded purple fabric, and she waited for the car to come back. It did not come back. The sky above her was the color of old iron, heavy and close and full of the particular kind of silence that precedes a Montana rainstorm. The kind of silence that has weight to it. Lily knew that sky. She had lived beneath it her entire life, and she knew what it meant. She had maybe 20 minutes before the rain turned serious, maybe less. She looked east along the highway. She looked west. Both directions stretched flat and empty toward horizons that offered nothing. There was a diner set back from the road about 100 yards east, but its windows were dark and its parking lot was cracked and empty, the kind of building that had stopped being a place people went to years ago and was now just a shape beside the road. She sat down. She sat down on the gravel shoulder of Highway 12, 14 miles east of Garrison, Montana, and she pulled her knees up to her chest and she held on to herself the way you hold on to something when you are not sure the ground beneath you is going to stay where it is. And she thought about her mother. If this story were simpler, this is where it would begin. A girl on a highway, a storm coming. But stories like this one are never simple because the moment a child ends up alone on the side of a road, there is always a longer story behind it. There is always a trail of days and weeks and months that led to that shoulder, that gravel, that skitite. And Lily Dawson's trail went back exactly 26 months to a Tuesday afternoon in August when her mother stopped breathing in a hospital bed in Missoula, and the world split cleanly into before and after. Her mother's name was Megan Dawson, and she had been the kind of woman who made everything around her feel deliberate and alive. Not in a loud way, not in the way of women who commanded rooms or drew attention to themselves. Megan was quiet about it. She noticed things. She noticed when the light through the kitchen window turned a particular shade of gold in the late afternoon, and she would stop whatever she was doing and stand there for a moment just looking at it as if the light deserved that. She noticed when the first crocuses pushed through the snow in March, and she would crouch down and touch them with one finger and say their names out loud, as if greeting old friends who had been away too long. She noticed everything about Lily. She noticed when Lily was thinking hard about something, because Lily pressed her tongue against the inside of her cheek when she concentrated a habit she had inherited from Jack, though neither of them knew it. She noticed when Lily was sad before Lily herself had fully registered the feeling, and she would sit beside her without saying anything, just close, just present until Lily was ready to say whatever needed saying. She noticed the drawings. Lily had been drawing for as long as she could hold a crayon. Flowers mostly. Wild, sprawling, impossible gardens that spilled off the edges of notebook pages and climbed the margins of her homework and filled the backs of grocery receipts that Megan kept finding in jacket pockets and kitchen drawers. The flowers were never realistic. They were too big, too bright, too abundant, the kind of flowers that existed only in the imagination of a child who believed that beautiful things should take up as much space as they wanted. Megan had loved those drawings. She had taped them to the refrigerator, to the bathroom mirror, to the dashboard of her car. She had kept a garden of her own along the south side of the house, roses and marigolds and lavender, and she had taught Lily the name of every plant in it. She kept a small green notebook where she recorded what she planted, where, how deep, how far apart, which ones needed shade, and which ones turned their faces toward the sun. The lavender was Lily's favorite. She loved the color of it and the smell of it and the way the word felt in her mouth when she said it. Lavender. She said it carefully every time, like something worth keeping. On Lily's 5th birthday, Megan had given her a necklace, a thin silver chain with a small silver bird in mid-flight wings spread caught at the precise moment of lifting off from something. Megan had fastened it around Lily's neck herself, her fingers gentle and sure, and Lily had looked down at the bird resting against her collarbone and then up at her mother's face. It is a particular kind of memory, the kind that becomes more important as you get older, more detailed, more vivid, as if time polishes it rather than wearing it down. Lily remembered the weight of the bird against her skin. She remembered the way her mother smiled, not a big smile, just the private one she saved for moments between the two of them. She remembered what her mother said. "You are the most beautiful flower in my whole garden." Lily had worn that necklace every day. Then the garden died. It did not die all at once. It died the way gardens die when the person who tended them is no longer there to do it. The roses went first, then the marigolds. The lavender held on the longest, the way lavender does, stubborn and fragrant, even in neglect. But by the first hard frost after Megan's death, it was gone too. The south side of the house became just a strip of bare earth with the ghosts of stakes and string still marking where the rose had been. Megan Dawson was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer on a Wednesday in June. The doctor said the word, and the room changed. Lily was not there for that conversation, but she was there for what came after, for the way her mother came home that evening and sat in the garden for a long time without moving, just looking at the lavender, just being near it. Lily had watched her from the kitchen window and understood without being told that something had shifted in the architecture of the world. Megan died on a Tuesday in August. 4 months. That was the distance between the world Lily lived in and the world she was about to live in. 4 months to say everything that mattered, and 4 months was not nearly enough. In those 4 months, Megan did what she could. She wrote letters that Lily would not find for years. She recorded herself reading Charlotte's Web on an old tape recorder. Her voice steady through most of it, breaking only once near the end, at the part about the web in the morning light, and the way some things are beautiful precisely because they do not last. She sat with Lily in the garden every evening that her body would allow it, and she named the flowers one more time, of them as if she were handing them over for safekeeping. The last time Lily saw her mother conscious, Megan was in the hospital bed in Missoula. Her face had changed in the way that faces change when the body beneath them is letting go. But her eyes were the same. She looked at Lily and she touched the bird necklace resting against Lily's collarbone, and she said something that Lily held on to afterward like a rope in deep water. "You are going to be so brave, sweetheart. You already are." Lily did not feel brave. She felt 6 years old and terrified, and unable to understand why the person she loved most in the world was disappearing in front of her, but she nodded, because her mother had asked her to be brave and that was enough. Jack Dawson, Lily's father, was a long-haul truck driver. He was a big man, broad-shouldered and quiet in the way that big, quiet men are, the kind of man who showed people he loved them by showing up, by working, by staying. He did not cry easily. He was not built for the kind of grief that Megan's death demanded. He tried. He tried in the ways he knew how. He made Lily breakfast every morning he was home, even when the eggs were burned and the toast was wrong, and she ate it anyway without complaint because she understood that the breakfast was not about the food. It was about his hands doing something for her. It was about being present. He taught her to memorize his phone number when she was 5. "What if you ever need me and you do not have your phone?" he had told her. "You find a phone somewhere, any phone, and you call me." She had repeated the number back to him until she could say it in her sleep. She could still say it now. He sat on the edge of Lily's bed the night after the funeral and folded his hands in his lap and looked at them the way a man looks at his hands when they have nothing useful to do. "It moved fast, Bug. There was not anything anybody could have done." That was what he said. That was all he could say. Lily had nodded. She was 6 years old. She had not fully understood what nothing anybody could have done meant, but she understood that her mother was not in the house anymore, and she understood that her father cried in the garage sometimes when he thought no one could hear him. She could hear him through the wall of her bedroom. She lay in bed listening to it, and she did not go to him because she sensed with the particular emotional intelligence of children who love their parents very much that he needed to do this alone, that being seen in it would make it harder, not easier. She kept a photograph of her mother on the nightstand beside her bed, Megan laughing at someone off-camera, sunlight catching her blonde hair the same shade as Lily's. Every night before she went to sleep, Lily talked to that photograph. She told her mother about school. She told her about the birds she had seen that day, Because Megan had loved birds, had known their names, and their calls had taught Lily to recognize the difference between a meadowlark and a song sparrow just by listening. She told her about whatever book she was reading. It was something private and necessary, the one ritual she had left. She also drew flowers. She drew them constantly, compulsively, in the particular way a child draws when drawing is not a hobby, but a language, the only language adequate for the thing she is trying to say. She filled notebooks with them. She drew them in the margins of her homework, on the inside covers of her chapter books, on napkins at diners, when Jack took her along on short-haul runs because he could not bear to leave her with anyone and could not bear to be away from her. The flowers were always the same ones: roses, marigolds, lavender, the garden that no longer existed, recreated in crayon and colored pencil over and over, as if by drawing it enough times she could keep it alive somewhere. She was drawing when the world changed again. 10 months after Megan died, Jack met Vivian. He met her at a truck stop outside Billings. She was behind the counter. She had dark hair and a quick smile and a way of talking that made you feel like you were the only person in the room, a talent that some people have naturally and some people cultivate on purpose, and the difference between the two is the difference between warmth and performance, though it can take a long time to tell which one you are looking at. Jack was lonely. That was the simple truth of it, and there was no shame in it, and no one who understood what he had been through would have blamed him for it. He was a man who had built his life around a woman and a daughter, and the woman was gone, and the daughter needed things he did not know how to provide, and the loneliness of that was the kind that sits in your chest like a stone you cannot cough up. Vivian was kind to him. She remembered his coffee order. She asked about Lily. She said the right things at the right times. She was good at that. They dated for 4 months. They married in a small ceremony at the county courthouse. Lily wore a yellow dress and held a bouquet of daisies and smiled for the photographs because her father was smiling, and she wanted him to be happy, and she understood even at 7 that her happiness about this was expected and that providing it was part of being good. She tried to like Vivian. She really tried. In the beginning, it was not hard. Vivian brought gifts: a coloring book with intricate designs, a stuffed rabbit with a satin ribbon. She helped Lily with her homework. She made dinners that were better than anything Jack could manage, and she kept the house cleaner than it had been since Megan died, and there was something about the order of it, the predictability of it, that felt almost like safety. But almost is not the same as actually. The first time Vivian said something that hurt Lily was not even sure she had heard it right. It was a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks after the wedding. Jack had left that morning for a 2-week haul to the Pacific Northwest, and the house had settled into the particular quiet that it had when it was just the two of them. A quiet that felt different from the quiet when Jack was home, thinner, somehow like the walls were not as thick. Lily was at the kitchen table drawing. She had her crayons spread around her, and she was making a garden, a big one with flowers that climbed off the top of the page and into the sky. She was deep inside it, in that place where drawing took her, the place that felt close to her mother. Vivian came into the kitchen. She stood behind Lily for a moment looking at the drawing. Then she said in a voice that was perfectly even and perfectly measured and contained not a single thing that could be called unkind, if you wrote it down and showed it to someone later: "Why do you always draw the same thing?" It was not a question. It was a statement with a question mark attached to it, and the difference mattered. Lily looked up. "They are flowers. My mom used to—" She stopped. Something in Vivian's face had shifted. Not a big shift. The kind of shift you would miss if you were not already watching for it, the way animals watch for shifts in the weather. A tightening around the mouth, a cooling behind the eyes. Lily learned to watch for that shift the way she had learned to watch for rain. Over the weeks and months that followed, Vivian's unkindness revealed itself the way water reveals the shape of the thing it is moving through, slowly, persistently following the path of least resistance toward the lowest point. She never hit Lily. She never raised her voice. She never did anything that would leave a mark visible enough for someone else to see and question. What she did was quieter than that, and in some ways worse, because quiet cruelty teaches a child something specific about the world. It teaches them that the danger is in the air itself, that it has no edges, no boundaries, no place where it starts, and you can point to it and say, there, that is the thing that is wrong. It is everywhere and nowhere, and it is your job to navigate it, and if you fail, the failure is yours. Vivian made Lily feel like a problem, Not with single devastating acts, but with 1,000 small ones. A tone of voice. A silence held half a beat too long. A look that landed on Lily the way a look lands on a stain on a tablecloth. An assessment followed by resignation, followed by the decision that the tablecloth is not worth replacing, and the stain will simply have to be tolerated. She said things, specific things aimed at the soft places in a child that adults can find when they choose to look for them. And your father only kept you because he felt guilty. He would have moved on better without you. She said that on a Wednesday evening in November, while Jack was somewhere in North Dakota, and the furnace was making that ticking sound it made when the temperature dropped below zero. She said it without emphasis, without emotion, in the same flat voice she used for everything. The voice that was worse than yelling, because yelling was at least an admission that you were affected by something, and Vivian's voice was an admission of nothing at all. Lily had been standing in the kitchen doorway. She had come to ask if she could have a glass of milk before bed. She stood there for a moment after Vivian said it, and then she turned around and went back to her room and got into bed and lay there in the dark and examined the sentence the way you examine something sharp that has cut you. Not because you want to look at it, but because you need to understand the shape of the wound it has made. She did not believe it. That was the thing she held on to. She did not believe that her father kept her out of guilt. She knew her father loved her. She knew it in her bones the way she knew the sky was blue and the earth was round and her mother was gone. Her father loved her. That was a fact as fixed and immovable as any fact in the universe. But hearing it said out loud by an adult in the house where she lived, the house that was supposed to be safe that did something, it planted a seed, not of belief but of something else, of the understanding that someone in her life had chosen to say that sentence to her, had aimed it at her deliberately, and had not cared about the damage. That understanding changed the temperature of the house. It changed the temperature of Lily. She learned to be small. She learned to be quiet. She learned to read the energy of a room before she walked into it. She learned to sense when Vivian's mood was shifting and to make herself scarce before the shift completed. She made her bed every morning before Vivian could walk past the door and find something wrong with it. She ate whatever was put in front of her without complaining. She kept her voice low. She disappeared into her room the moment the air began to feel wrong. She was good at it most days. She had always been an observant child, and now that observation had a purpose. Survival. Not the dramatic kind, not the kind that involves fire and flood and running for your life. The other kind. The kind that happens in kitchens and hallways and bedrooms. The kind that happens in silence. The necklace disappeared in January. Lily came home from school one afternoon and went to her room and reached for the small wooden box on her dresser where she kept the bird necklace when she was not wearing it, which was only at night and only because she was afraid of breaking the chain in her sleep. The box was empty. She searched her room. She searched the bathroom. She searched the laundry. She went to Vivian, trying to keep her voice calm, trying not to let the panic show, because she had learned that showing panic in front of Vivian was like showing blood in front of something that tracked by scent. My necklace, Lily said. The one with the bird. It was in my box. It is not there. Vivian did not look up from the magazine she was reading. I threw it out. It was clutter. 3 words destroyed 3 years of memory. I threw it out. The necklace her mother had fastened around her neck on her 5th birthday. The necklace she had worn every day until she was afraid to wear it anymore. The bird in mid-flight wings spread the precise moment of lifting off. Lily stood in the middle of the living room and felt something inside her go very quiet. Not numb. Quiet. The particular quiet of a child who has just learned that the person she lives with is capable of destroying something sacred and calling it cleaning up. Vivian turned a page. That same month, on a night when the temperature dropped to 14 below, Lily went out the back door to bring in the cat that sometimes came to the porch. The cat was old and half wild and belonged to no one, but Lily left food for it and worried about it when the cold came. She had been outside for maybe 2 minutes when she heard the lock turn. She tried the handle. Locked. She knocked. She knocked again, harder. She went to the kitchen window and looked in and saw a Vivian sitting at the table with a cup of tea, her back to the door, not moving. Lily knocked on the window. Vivian did not turn around. She stood on the back porch in 14 below air for 40 minutes. She was wearing a thin sweater and no coat. Her fingers went numb first. Then her ears, then the numbness began creeping inward, the way it does when the cold gets serious, moving from the edges toward the center. And she began to understand in a distant clinical way that this was dangerous. That her body was not just uncomfortable, that something real was happening to it. A neighbor 3 houses down, a woman named Mrs. Pemberton, saw her from an upstairs window. She came out in her bathrobe and brought Lily inside and wrapped her in blankets and gave her hot chocolate and asked her what had happened. I locked myself out, Lily said. She said it without hesitation, the lie arriving fully formed because she had already calculated the cost of the truth. If she told Mrs. Pemberton what had really happened, Mrs. Pemberton would confront Vivian. Vivian would deny it. Jack would be called home. There would be a fight. And somehow in the math of it, Lily was certain she would end up being the problem, the one who caused trouble, the one who made things worse. She never locked the back door. She had not locked it that night. At school, her teacher, Mrs. Calloway, had begun to notice things, small things. The way Lily flinched when a door closed too loudly. The way she asked permission for things that did not require permission, like sharpening a pencil or getting a drink of water. The way she had stopped raising her hand in class, even when Mrs. Calloway could see her mouthing the answer. The way she had gotten smaller somehow, not physically, but in the way she occupied space, as if she were trying to take up as little room as possible. Mrs. Calloway had asked her gently once if everything was okay at home. Lily had smiled and said yes, and changed the subject so smoothly that Mrs. Calloway had almost believed her. Almost. She made a note in her file and watched more closely and told herself she would ask again soon. Soon turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And by the time October came, she had not asked again, and that was something she would carry with her for a long time afterward. 3 weeks after the necklace vanished on a night in February, Lily woke at 2 in the morning with a dry throat and went to the kitchen for water. The hallway was dark. The house was silent. She padded down the stairs in bare feet and stopped. The living room light was on. Vivian was sitting on the couch. She was facing the mirror above the fireplace. And around her neck, catching the light every time she moved, was the small silver bird. Lily stood in the darkness of the hallway and watched Vivian touch the necklace with one finger, turning the bird so it caught the lamplight, examining it the way a person examines something they have claimed. Lily did not make a sound. She went back to her room. She got into bed. She lay there and she did not cry because crying was something that belonged to a girl who still expected the world to be fair, and Lily was no longer that girl. She was going to tell her father. She planned it carefully. She would wait until he came home, until he was rested, until the right moment. But the right moment kept not arriving because Jack came home tired, and Jack left again soon, and the windows of time, when he was present and awake, and not already burdened with something, were small, and Lily did not want to make things worse. I did not want to make things worse. That sentence, that specific sentence in the mouth of an 8-year-old, if you have ever heard a child say that, you know what it means. It means the child has taken on the weight of the household. It means the child has decided that her own pain is less important than the stability of the structure around her. It means the child is managing adults instead of being managed by them. Lily carried the knowledge of the necklace inside her, the way she carried everything inside her, quietly, carefully, in that interior space where she kept the things that mattered too much to risk having someone else touch them. Then came the morning of the flowers. It was a Tuesday in October. Jack had left 3 days earlier on a long-haul run to Wyoming, 2 weeks out, maybe more. Lily had her crayons spread around her on the carpet in the upstairs hallway. She was sitting with her back against the wall, her knees pulled up, drawing in her notebook. A garden, a big one. Flowers taller than people in colors that did not exist in nature, the kind of garden her mother would have loved. She was deep inside the drawing. She was in that place where the world went quiet, and the only thing that existed was the movement of the crayon and the colors appearing on the page, and the particular feeling of closeness to her mother that drawing always gave her. It was the only place she still felt safe, the only place Vivian could not reach. Her hand drifted. She did not mean for it to happen. That was the truth, and it mattered to her even though no one would ask for it. The crayon in her hand moved sideways off the edge of the notebook and onto the wall. She drew one flower there, a simple thing, a circle of petals, a long green stem, 2 leaves, maybe 3 inches tall. And then, because it looked lonely by itself, she drew another one beside it. She was not thinking about what she was doing. She was not thinking at all. She was just in that quiet place where drawing took her, the place that felt close to her mother. And by the time she came back to herself and saw what she had done, there was a whole small garden blooming along the bottom of the hallway wall, orange and yellow and pink and green, roses and marigolds, and what she meant to be lavender, but which had come out more blue than purple because she did not have the right crayon. She stared at it. Her stomach dropped. She heard Vivian's footsteps on the stairs. Lily. Vivian said her name the way you say the name of a broken thing you have found on the floor. Flat, containing. Lily stood up quickly, crayons scattering across the carpet. I am sorry, I did not mean to. I will clean it off. I will. You drew on the wall. It was an accident. I will fix it. I will get a cloth. You drew on my wall. Vivian's voice did not rise. That was the thing about Vivian that had always frightened Lily more than shouting ever could have. She never raised her voice. She just got quieter and quieter until the air itself felt wrong, until the silence between her words became a space you could drown in. I just had that hallway repainted 3 weeks ago. You know that. I know. I am sorry. I really did not mean to. What are those supposed to be? Lily looked at the flowers on the wall. Her flowers. Her mother's flowers. The garden she had been carrying inside her for 26 months. The garden that would not stop growing, no matter how small she tried to make herself. They are flowers, Mom used to. She stopped. She knew better than to say that. She knew that bringing up Megan in front of Vivian was like touching a wire you already knew was live. I like to draw flowers. Something passed across Vivian's face. Something that was not quite emotion, but lived in the same neighborhood. Something cold and final like a door closing at the end of a long hallway. Get your jacket, Vivian said. Lily blinked. What? Put your jacket on, we are going for a drive. Lily had thought they were going to the hardware store, maybe the craft supply place so Vivian could get paint to cover the wall. She thought it would be a silent, uncomfortable errand with a lecture at the end of it, and then a week of cold dinners and short answers in the particular chill that settled over the house whenever Vivian was punishing her for something. She did not think. She did not imagine. She could not have conceived of what was actually going to happen. She buckled her seatbelt in the back seat. She folded her hands in her lap. She looked out the window and watched the town give way to the flat, open highway heading east. And she told herself that whatever happened, she would be quiet and polite and apologize again as soon as Vivian gave her an opening. She told herself that this was just another version of the cold she had learned to navigate, another room to read, another mood to survive. She told herself that in an hour, maybe two, they would be back at the house and the day would settle back into its familiar pattern of avoidance and silence and the careful architecture of not being seen. She looked at the back of Vivian's head, dark hair pulled into a clip, the line of her jaw, the hands on the steering wheel perfectly positioned at 10 and 2 controlled and deliberate the way Vivian did everything. Lily studied those hands and she thought about her mother's hands, which had been different in every way. Her mother's hands were always in the dirt or wrapped around a mug or reaching for Lily's face to push the hair out of her eyes. They were hands that touched things because they wanted to be close to them. Vivian's hands touched things because she wanted to control them. They drove for 20 minutes without speaking. The radio was not on. The silence was the kind that had weight to it, the kind that pressed against your eardrums and made you aware of your own breathing. Lily watched the mile markers pass. She recognized that they were getting farther from town, but she told herself that was fine, that maybe they were going to a different store, that there was a reason for all of it that would make sense in a minute. Then Vivian slowed the car. She pulled onto the shoulder of the highway. The engine kept running. She turned around in the driver's seat and looked at Lily with an expression that Lily had never seen on anyone's face before. It was not anger. It was not even cruelty exactly. It was something worse than both of those things. It was the absence of everything. It was indifference so complete that it did not even bother to disguise itself. Get out. Lily did not move. What? Get out of the car, Lily. Lily looked out the window. There was nothing out there. Fields. A stretch of asphalt going east and west until it curved and disappeared. The abandoned diner. The sky, the color of iron. We are in the middle of nowhere. You want to act like you live in a barn? You can figure out what it feels like. Vivian reached back and unclicked Lily's seatbelt. The click was small and final. Vivian, please. Now. Lily got out of the car. She did not know why she did it. Later, much later, she would think about that moment and wonder why she had not refused, why she had not locked her door, why she had not screamed or cried or bargained more than that single please. But the truth was that children who have spent years learning to obey certain adults do not have a switch they can flip. They have instincts worn into grooves. And Lily's instinct, built over 2 years of reading rooms and sensing danger and making herself small, said comply. Do not make it worse. Do what the adult says and wait for things to go back to normal. She stood on the shoulder of the highway with her backpack in her hands, and she watched Vivian's car pull back onto the road. She waited for it to slow down, to turn around, to come back. The car did not slow down. It rounded the curve and disappeared. Lily stood there for a moment that felt enormous. Then she sat down. She sat down on the gravel shoulder of the highway, pulled her knees up to her chest, and she thought very carefully and clearly about what her options were. She could walk, but she did not know how far it was back to town, and her sneakers were already letting in cold through a hole in the left toe. And the sky above her was about to open. She could wait. That was the other option. Wait for another car. Wait for someone to stop. Wait for Vivian to turn around. Wait for her father to somehow know where she was and come find her. Her father. Lily's throat tightened. Her dad was in Wyoming. He had left 3 days ago. 2 weeks out, he had said. Maybe more. He would not be home for 11 days minimum. He had his phone, but he drove through stretches with no signal for hours at a time. And she did not have a phone. She had asked for one last Christmas, and Vivian had said she was too young. She thought about her mother's photograph back on her nightstand. She thought about the flowers on the wall, still there, orange and pink and yellow. A whole garden growing in the hallway that no one would see now. She thought about the bird necklace around Vivian's neck. The rain started. It started gentle, the way Montana rain sometimes does. Just a soft falling from the sky, the kind that makes you think it will not amount to much. But Lily had lived here long enough to know that was a lie. In 20 minutes, it would be relentless. She unzipped her backpack and pulled out the one thing she always carried, a battered paperback copy of Charlotte's Web that she had checked out from the school library and renewed so many times the librarian had stopped asking for it back. Her mother had read it to her the summer before she got sick. They had read it together on the porch in the evenings, Megan's voice doing all the characters, Lily leaning against her side. She held the book against her chest under her jacket to keep it dry, and she sat in the rain on the side of Highway 12 and she waited. She was not sure what she was waiting for. She just knew that giving up felt wrong. 45 minutes passed. 3 cars went by. The first 2 did not slow down at all. They were going 60, 70 miles an hour. The spray from their tires hitting the shoulder in a cold sheet that soaked through Lily's jeans and made her flinch. The third car slowed slightly. Lily stood up. She raised her hand. She stood there in the rain with her arm up, a small figure on the side of a highway, and she watched the car hesitate for a single second before it sped back up and disappeared. She sat back down. That was the moment. If you had been standing somewhere nearby, somewhere dry, watching this, that was the moment you would have understood. Not the moment Vivian said, "Get out." Not the moment the car disappeared. This moment. The moment when Lily Dawson, 8 years old, watched the third car speed away from her and sat back down in the gravel without a sound. Because that was the moment that revealed what was inside her. Not hope, not exactly. Something sturdier than hope. Something that had been built in her by a mother who planted gardens and named every flower in them, and read Charlotte's Web on summer evenings and said, "You are going to be so brave, sweetheart." It was endurance. The quiet, unglamorous, unrewarded kind. The kind that does not make you feel strong. The kind that just keeps you sitting upright when every part of you wants to fold. The rain was not gentle anymore. It came sideways now, driven by the wind that poured off the mountains to the west, and Lily's jacket was soaked through and she was shivering in the specific exhausted way you shiver when your body has been cold for a long time and has stopped even trying to pretend it can fix the situation on its own. The water ran down her face and into her collar, and she could feel it pooling in the bottom of her sneakers, cold against her soles, and she wiggled her toes just to confirm they were still there. She thought about the garden on the wall. She wondered if Vivian had already painted over it. She wondered if the orange and yellow and pink flowers were already gone covered by the same flat white that covered everything in that house. And she thought with the particular clarity that comes when you are very cold and very tired and very alone, that it did not matter. That the flowers on the wall were not the real garden. They were only a drawing of it. The real garden was the one her mother had planted and the one Lily kept inside her, and that garden could not be painted over. Not by Vivian, not by anyone. She thought about crying. She had already cried a little in the first few minutes, a brief and private kind of crying that she had stopped quickly because it had not helped and because there was no one to hear it, and somehow that made it worse. But now, sitting in the full force of the rain, she felt a different kind of pressure behind her eyes. Not grief exactly, something quieter and more specific than grief. She felt the particular loneliness of a child who has just understood for the first time that the adult who was supposed to protect her has chosen not to. That was a particular kind of knowledge, and once you had it, you could not unhave it. It lived in you after that. It changed the way you looked at hands that reached towards you, and voices that said your name, and doors that opened and closed around you. Lily pressed Charlotte's web harder against her chest. She looked east along the highway. She looked west. Both directions were empty. The world had contracted to the size of this shoulder, this gravel, this rain. Everything else had fallen away. The town, the school, the house, the flowers on the wall. All of it belonged to a life that was somewhere else, and she was here, and here was nowhere, and nobody was coming. That was what she believed in that moment. Nobody was coming. And the terrible thing about believing that was not the fear it produced. It was the calm. The flat, heavy calm of a child who has accepted something too large for her and is simply sitting inside it, breathing, waiting for whatever comes next because waiting is the only thing left. And then she heard it. It started so low she thought she was imagining it. A vibration more felt than heard. Something that moved through the ground and up through the gravel and into her bones before it ever reached her ears. She straightened her back. She tilted her head. The sound grew. It was engines. Multiple engines. More than she had ever heard together in one place. A deep mechanical roar that built and built until she could feel it in the back of her teeth, until the sound seemed to come from everywhere at once, from the sky and the ground and the rain itself, and the rain seemed to quiet in the face of it, as if even the weather understood that something was arriving. She stood up. Around the curve of the highway to the west, something appeared. She saw the headlights first. Dozens of them, paired beams cutting through the gray rain like the eyes of something enormous waking up. Then she saw the bikes themselves. An enormous churning river of chrome and black leather filling both lanes of the highway, moving together with the kind of coordination that comes not from instruction, but from years of riding in the same formation, knowing without being told where to be and how fast to go and when to shift. And at the front of it all, she saw a single rider. Enormous, gray-bearded, moving at a steady, unhurried pace like a man who had ridden enough miles that no road surprised him anymore. His hands were easy on the handlebars. His eyes were scanning the road the way they always scan the road, not looking for anything in particular, just seeing what was there. He saw her. She saw him see her. She saw the moment his eyes found the small shape on the shoulder of the highway, and she saw the moment his brain registered what he was looking at, and she saw, even from a distance, something change in the way he held his shoulders. A straightening, a focusing. The particular shift that happens in a man's body when he transitions from moving through the world to moving towards something in it. He did not hesitate. That was the thing she would remember later. There was no pause between seeing her and deciding. The two things happened as one, the way breathing happens, the way a heartbeat happens. He saw a child alone in the rain, and he began to stop. It was that simple. It was that enormous. The whole thundering river began to slow. 170 motorcycles. 170 engines dropping from a roar to a rumble to a murmur. 170 riders following the man at the front, the way they always followed him, not because they were told to, but because that was what you did. It was what they had always done. The sound of them settling was like the sound of a tide going out, enormous and unhurried and certain of itself. Lily Dawson stood on the shoulder of Highway 12 in the rain, and she watched them come, and she did not move, and she did not flinch, and she did not look away. She was 8 years old. She had been alone for 45 minutes. She had been left by someone who was supposed to keep her safe. She had been passed by 3 cars that did not stop. She was soaked and shivering and holding a book against her chest like a hand she could hold when there were no other hands available. And now the road was full of engines and light and the sound of something arriving that was bigger than anything she had words for. She did not know yet what was going to happen. She did not know their names or their stories or the particular grief they were carrying home from the memorial ride they had just completed for a man named Wes Ryland, who had died the year before and who would have, without question, been the first one off his bike. She did not know any of that yet. All she knew was that someone had finally slowed down, and somewhere inside her, in that quiet interior space where she kept the things that mattered, the photographs and the flowers, and the memory of her mother's voice reading about a spider who wrote words in a web because she believed that the right words, placed carefully enough, could save a life, something shifted. Not hope, not yet, but the space where hope could go, the empty place that had been waiting for something to fill it. Lily Dawson stood in the rain on the shoulder of Highway 12, and she held Charlotte's web against her chest, and she watched the first rider dismount. A man so large he seemed to reshape the air around him, and she did not look away. She had been waiting for 45 minutes. She had been waiting in a way for much longer than that. The waiting was about to end. Hank Morrow rode named Grizzly, which he had carried for so long that he answered to it faster than the name his mother had given him, had been riding for 35 years. He had ridden through blizzards that turned the highway into a white wall, and heat waves that made the asphalt shimmer like water, and the particular miserable combination of both that Montana liked to produce in the same week, just to remind you that the land did not care about your plans. He had ridden 200,000 miles on roads that had no names, and through towns that had no stoplights, and he had seen most things a person could see from the seat of a motorcycle. He had never seen a child sitting alone on the shoulder of Highway 12 in the middle of a rainstorm. When he slowed, the riders behind him slowed too. Not because he had given an order, not because anyone raised a hand or flashed a signal, but because in this brotherhood, you followed Grizzly's lead the way you followed gravity. It was simply what happened. It was what they had always done through 35 years and 200,000 miles, and the funerals and weddings and bar fights and hospital rooms that stitched one year to the next. When Grizzly moved, you moved. When Grizzly stopped, you stopped. That was the deal. He pulled his bike onto the shoulder. Behind him, 170 engines settled from a roar to an idle, then cut off one by one, the sound cascading backward through the column like dominoes falling in reverse until the only sounds remaining were the rain on the asphalt and the distant complaint of thunder moving east over the mountains. He kicked his stand down. He climbed off the bike. He was a large man, 6'3", 260 pounds, with a gray beard that came halfway down his chest and hands the size of dinner plates, and the kind of face that had been rearranged by weather and time, and a few memorable disagreements into something that was not handsome, but was unmistakably real. He knew how he looked. He had spent most of his adult life watching people adjust to how he looked. The small step back, the widened eyes, the particular tightening of the jaw that happens when a person is telling themselves not to be afraid. He had grown used to it. He did not take it personally. But the girl on the shoulder of the highway did not flinch when he walked toward her. She watched him come with eyes that were too steady, too old for 8 years old. Eyes that had moved past the point of being frightened by one more large thing in a day that had already been full of frightening things. There was something in that steadiness that stopped Grizzly in his tracks for half a step. Something that made him recalibrate what he was walking into. He crouched down. He had done this before. Gotten himself to eye level with a child. He had grandkids, 2 of them, and he knew that there was something about a grown adult towering over a small person that made communication harder than it needed to be. You had to come down to where they were. You had to make yourself less of a wall and more of a door. He looked at her directly. Rain was running down his face and into his beard, and he did not wipe it away because wiping it away would have meant breaking eye contact. And he understood in the way that some people understand these things, without being taught that this child needed him to hold her gaze right now, more than she needed anything else. Hey there, kiddo. His voice was the kind of voice that came from a big chest, deep rough at the edges but not unkind. The kind of voice that sounded like it had been used hard and put away wet a few thousand times. You okay? She looked at him for a moment. She studied his face the way she studied everything with that careful observational precision that was so much older than her years. And then she said one word. No. Just that. No performance, no drama, no tears deployed for effect. Just a small girl in a soaked jacket telling the truth to a stranger because she had nothing left to lose by telling it. Grizzly held her gaze. Behind him, he could hear his brothers getting off their bikes, boots on gravel, the creak of leather, the quiet shifting of men who were giving distance but not leaving. They always did that when Grizzly stopped for something. They formed a perimeter without being told, the way animals arrange themselves around a place that matters. Not crowding, not retreating, just present. "What is your name?" he asked her. "Lily, Lily." He said it like he was putting it somewhere safe, somewhere he could find it again. "How old are you?" "8. Where are your parents?" "Lily." And here was the moment. Here was the place where Grizzly watched her face move through something, a calculation, a decision, a weighing of risks and costs that no child should have been practiced enough to perform. He watched her consider what to say and how to say it and how much of the truth was safe to give to a stranger. And then he watched her face settle into a flatness that broke his heart a little quietly in the private place where Grizzly kept the things that broke his heart, a place that was smaller than most people would have guessed, but deeper than anyone knew. "My stepmom left me here." She looked at him without blinking. "And my dad does not know." Grizzly was quiet for 3 full seconds. 3 seconds during which the rain came down and the thunder moved farther east, and 170 men stood in a wet highway and waited. Then he straightened up slightly and turned his head just enough to catch Sully's eye. Sully Baines had ridden beside Grizzly for 22 years. He was leaner, quieter, with a red bandana tied around his left wrist that he never took off and never explained. And he could read a look from Grizzly at 40 feet the way most people read a sentence in a book. The look Grizzly gave him now was clear and specific and required no translation. "Get the sheriff on the phone." Sully was already reaching for his cell. Grizzly turned back to Lily. "Okay," he said. "Okay, Lily, I want you to know something." He waited until she was looking directly at him, until her eyes were locked on his and there was nothing between them but the rain and the truth. "You are not alone anymore. You hear me? Not one more second." She studied his face for a moment, looking for the lie in it, looking for the crack in the surface where the real thing showed through the way she had learned to look at every adult face for the past 2 years, searching for the gap between what they said and what they meant. She had become an expert at finding that gap. She had found it in Vivian's smile and Vivian's voice, and Vivian's perfectly measured kindness that was not kindness at all but something else wearing kindness's face. She did not find a gap in Grizzly's face. She did not find a lie. She found exactly what was there, a man in the rain who had decided something and was not going to undecide it. Her chin moved, the smallest possible nod. "Okay," she said. And behind them on the highway, not one of the 170 men went anywhere. Nobody moved to leave. That was the first thing Lily noticed. She had half expected them to start their engines after a minute or two, to decide she was not their problem, to nod at each other the way adults nod when they have decided that something is someone else's responsibility and they are free to go. But nobody moved. They stood in the rain like they had been planted there. Big men with water running off their jackets and down their beards, and not one of them looked like he had anywhere else he needed to be. A man crouched beside Grizzly and held out a folded rain poncho. He did not say anything. He just held it out toward Lily the way you would offer something to a small creature you did not want to startle. She took it. "You got a name?" she asked him, because her mother had always told her to learn the names of the people who were kind to you. He blinked clearly, not expecting to be asked. "Sully," he said. "Thank you, Sully." He stood up quickly and turned away, but not before Lily caught the way his jaw worked, like he was chewing on something he could not quite swallow. Sully Baines had a daughter, 14 years old, at home in Bozeman right now, probably doing homework at the kitchen table with the TV on in the background, and the thought of her sitting on the side of a highway in the rain was doing something to the inside of his chest that he was not prepared to manage in front of other people. Grizzly watched Lily put the poncho on. It swallowed her completely. Came down past her knees, made her look like a child playing dress-up in a tent, her face peering out from the hood with an expression that was somehow simultaneously exhausted and alert. Something moved behind Grizzly's eyes that he kept off his face by long practice. Lily, he said, your dad, what is his name? Jack Dawson. And he is where right now, Wyoming. He drives trucks, long haul. She said it the way she had explained it 100 times. Without complaint, without self-pity, just fact. Her dad was gone a lot. That was how it was. That was the architecture of their life, and she had learned to live inside it the way you learn to live inside any structure, by knowing where the load-bearing walls were and not leaning on the ones that could not hold your weight. He said he would be back in 11 days. Grizzly absorbed that. You got a number for him. I know it by heart. She recited it, steady and clear the way she had recited it for her father when she was 5 years old, standing in the kitchen of the house that still had her mother in it, repeating the numbers until they were part of her the way her own name was part of her. Grizzly looked at Sully. Sully already had his phone out, already dialing. Try him, Grizzly said. Then he turned back to Lily. Is there anyone else, any family nearby? Lily thought about it seriously because she was the kind of child who gave serious thought to serious questions. My grandma lives in Billings, but she has bad knees and she does not drive on the highway anymore. Okay, my Uncle Kevin is in Florida. Okay, and my teacher, Mrs. Calloway. She is nice, but I do not know her phone number. Grizzly almost smiled. That is all right, kiddo. We will figure it out. Behind them, Sully held the phone to his ear. 10 seconds. 20. He met Grizzly's eyes and shook his head. Voicemail. Lily saw the exchange. Her face did not crumble. She just got very still in the way she had been still all afternoon. The practiced stillness of someone who had learned not to show the full weight of what she was feeling because showing it had never helped and had sometimes made things worse. But her hand tightened around Charlotte's web. She pressed it harder against her chest under the enormous poncho. He drives through areas with no signal sometimes. Her voice was perfectly level. He might not get it for a while. We will keep trying, Grizzly said. Can I? She stopped. Started again. Can someone stay with me while we wait? Another stop. She straightened her spine slightly, squared her shoulders inside the enormous poncho in a gesture that was so brave and so small that it made Grizzly's jaw tighten. I do not really want to be by myself anymore today. Grizzly sat down, right there on the gravel, all 6'3" of him on the wet shoulder of the highway, rain coming down, jeans soaking through as if it were the most natural thing in the world, as if he had always planned to sit in the rain on the side of Highway 12 on a Tuesday afternoon in October. I am not going anywhere, he said. She looked at him sideways. You are going to get wet. I am already wet. She considered this with the same seriousness she gave everything. Okay, she said, and she sat back down too. That was when the rest of them started moving. Not toward their bikes, but toward the two of them. Quietly, without direction, without anyone telling anyone else what to do. Like metal filings orienting toward a magnet. Like something older than decision was at work in them, something that lived in the part of a man that does not need to think before it acts. Because the thinking happened a long time ago, and the answer has been the same ever since. A man named Dutch opened a saddlebag and produced a battered thermos. He poured something into the cap and handed it down to Lily. She sniffed it. Cocoa, Dutch said. From this morning, still warm. She drank it in 3 long swallows and handed the cap back. Thank you, Dutch. He stared at her. How did you know my name? She pointed at the patch on his jacket. He looked down at it, then back at her and made a sound somewhere between a laugh and something else entirely. Something that he covered with a cough and a sudden interest in the condition of his thermos. Another man offered crackers from a Ziploc bag. Lily took 2 and ate them carefully like she was trying to make them last. A third man, young, maybe 25, with nervous hands and a harmonica-shaped bulge in his jacket pocket, sat down cross-legged in the gravel a few feet away. He pulled the harmonica out and looked at it, then looked at Lily. She was watching him with frank curiosity. Do you play? She asked. A little. Will you? He put it to his lips and played something slow and simple. Something that sounded like it came from a song you would hear on a radio late at night when you were driving somewhere far and could not sleep. It floated out over the rain in the idle quiet of the highway, and nobody said a word while it played. Lily sat beside Grizzly and listened with her eyes half closed and the rain coming down around her like a curtain and the poncho making her small and the cocoa warm in her stomach. My mom used to sing, she said, to no one in particular. Not real songs, just ones she made up about whatever was happening. Like if she was doing dishes, she would make up a song about the dishes. Nobody responded. Nobody needed to. The harmonica kept playing. She sounds like she was something, Grizzly said quietly. She was, Lily said. Just that. No elaboration. Just the flat, absolute truth of it, delivered with the same precision she brought to everything, the same refusal to say more or less than exactly what she meant. 3 minutes later, Sully tried Jack Dawson's number again. Again, voicemail. He left a message this time. Calm, factual, identifying himself, giving the highway number, saying Lily was safe and with them, and asking Jack to call back immediately on this number. When he hung up, he looked at Grizzly with an expression that asked what they did if Jack did not call back for hours. Grizzly's expression answered, "We stay until he does." Sully nodded once. He had been riding with Grizzly long enough that he had not actually needed to ask. That was when Lily looked up at Grizzly and said the thing that shifted the temperature of the entire afternoon. She has done it before, Lily said. The harmonica stopped. Not this, not leaving me somewhere. But she has done other things. Grizzly kept his voice even. What kind of other things? Lily pulled out a thread on the hem of the poncho. She took my mom's necklace, the one with the little bird on it. My dad gave it to my mom when I was born. She said she threw it away because it was clutter. But I saw her wearing it once when she thought I was asleep. She paused. She looked at the thread she was pulling, watching it lengthen. I did not say anything. I was going to tell my dad, but I did not want to make things worse. Sully, 3 feet away, went absolutely rigid, his whole body locked in the particular way a body locks when the person inside it is containing something that wants very badly to come out. Dutch turned and walked 6 paces in the other direction for no apparent reason and stood there with his back to everyone looking at the highway, his hands on his hips. An old man at the back of the group, a man named Old Ray, who was 78 years old and had been riding since before some of these men were born, a man who had barely spoken since they had stopped, took 3 steps backward until he was standing apart from everyone else. He had lost a granddaughter, not to a highway, not to rain, to a house where the doors locked from the wrong side and the bruises were always in places the teachers could not see. He had not gotten there in time. That was 9 years ago, and the weight of it had not lessened by a single ounce. He stood apart and he looked at the ground, and he did not trust his face to be near anyone else's. Grizzly said nothing for a moment. Then he spoke carefully in the way you speak when you know that every word matters and that the person listening is measuring each one. Lily, does your stepmother ever hurt you? She looked at him directly. Not like hitting, nothing like that. She searched for the word carefully the way a child does when they are trying to say something true and do not want to be misunderstood. Like she makes me feel like I am a problem. Like I am something that is in the way of her life. Like she would be happier if she started again. She told me once that my dad only kept me around because he felt guilty, that he would have moved on better without me. A beat of silence. I do not believe that. My dad loves me. But she said it, nobody spoke. The rain was the only sound for a full 10 seconds. The particular silence of men processing something that has exceeded the capacity of language and forced them into the territory of pure feeling, where there are no words adequate for what is moving through the chest. Sully, who had a daughter of his own, who had never once in 22 years of riding, cried in front of another member of this brotherhood, turned around and walked to his bike and sat on it facing away from everyone and stared at the horizon for a long moment. His shoulders did not move. His hands were flat on his thighs. But something in the line of his back told anyone watching that he was doing something private and that privacy should be respected. Grizzly watched him go. He understood. He felt the same thing moving through his own chest. A particular anger. Not the hot kind, not the kind that flares and burns and exhausts itself in its own heat. The other kind. The kind that sits low and heavy and does not move. The kind that has patience. The kind that will still be there in a month, in a year, cold and precise, and waiting for a place to put itself. He looked at Lily. Your dad needs to know all of this. I know. She said it without hesitation. I was going to tell him when he got home, but I kept waiting for the right time. There is never a right time for something like this. You just tell him. She nodded slowly. Will you be there when I do? Grizzly had not expected that question. He sat with it for a second, feeling the weight of it, understanding what it meant. This child was not asking for a favor. She was asking for a wall to stand behind. She was asking for something solid to be between her and the things she was afraid of. "If you want me there," he said finally, "I will be there." She seemed to file that away somewhere important, somewhere in that interior space where she kept the things that mattered. 43 minutes after Grizzly first pulled his bike over a sheriff's deputy named Harlan, came around the curve of the highway and slowed at the sight of what he found. Deputy Harlan had been a deputy for 9 years. He had handled most things a rural Montana sheriff's department put in front of a person. He had not been prepared to find one small blonde girl in an oversized poncho sitting in the gravel next to one of the largest men he had ever seen in his life, surrounded by 170 bikers, standing watch in the rain like an honor guard at a funeral where nobody had died. He got out of his car slowly. Deputy Grizzly said, standing, "She is okay. No injuries. Name is Lily Dawson, 8 years old. Father is a long-haul driver currently in Wyoming. We have left voicemail but no callback yet. Stepmother dropped her here approximately an hour ago and left." Harlan looked at Lily. "Is that true, sweetheart?" "Yes, sir." He absorbed this for a moment, looking at the highway, at the bikes, at the 170 faces watching him, with the patient, steady attention of men who had already decided what the right thing was and were waiting to see if he agreed. He crouched in front of Lily. "Okay, I'm going to help you get to your dad. Does that sound all right?" "Yes, please." He straightened. Grizzly stepped slightly closer and dropped his voice for the deputy's ears only. "She told us some things about the situation at home, about the stepmother. It is not just today. This has been going on. You are going to want to document that." Harlan met his eyes, read what was in them, understood. That was when Sully tried Jack Dawson's number one more time, and this time on the second ring, someone picked up. The voice that came through was rough with road noise. The sound of a man driving somewhere flat and fast, the hum of tires on pavement, and the particular whistling that the wind makes around a truck cab at highway speed. "Hello, who is this?" Sully held the phone out to Lily. She took it with both hands. She put it to her ear. "Daddy." Just that word. One word. And whatever composure she had held together through the rain and the waiting and the crackers and the harmonica and the terrible small truth she had told to strangers, all of it came apart at once. She did not wail. She did not collapse. She just started crying in the way you cry when you have been holding something so tightly for so long that the moment you feel safe enough to let go, your hands stop working entirely. "Daddy, I need you to come home." On the other end of the line, a truck driver in Wyoming went completely silent. Jack Dawson's voice came through the phone like a man who had just been struck by something he had not seen coming. He said her name twice. The first time was a question. The second time was something else entirely. A sound that was not quite a word, more like a man's whole chest collapsing inward at once. "Lily, where are you? What happened? Whose phone is this?" She was crying too hard to answer all of it at once. She pressed the phone against her ear with both hands and tried to find the words, but they kept breaking apart before she could get them out, and all that came through was fragments. "Highway. Vivian left me. Rain. I waited, Daddy. I waited for a long time." Grizzly watched her from 2 feet away. He did not reach for the phone. He did not step in. He just stayed close, which was exactly the right thing, and he knew it. Sometimes the right thing is not action. Sometimes the right thing is proximity, just being near enough that the person knows you are there. Sully did not watch. He was looking at the ground, jaw tight, arms crossed. Old Ray had come back from where he had been standing alone, but he stayed at the edge of the group, his face arranged into something neutral that did not quite succeed. Deputy Harlan had stepped back to his cruiser, but had not taken his eyes off Lily. On the phone, Jack's voice had changed completely. The road-rough tiredness in it was gone, replaced by something stripped and bare and immediate. The voice of a man whose entire nervous system had rearranged itself in the space of 30 seconds. "Okay. Okay, baby. Listen to me. Are you hurt? Are you okay?" "I am okay," she managed. "Some men found me on the highway. They stayed with me." "What men? Who put one of them on?" "Right now, please." Lily lowered the phone and held it out to Grizzly without a word. He took it. "Mr. Dawson, my name is Hank Morrow. I ride with the Hells Angels Montana chapter. We came across your daughter on Highway 12 about 14 miles east of Garrison. She has been with us for almost an hour. She is physically okay. She is warm. She has had something to eat. But, sir, she needs you to come home." The silence on the other end lasted exactly 4 seconds. Then Jack Dawson said in a voice that had gone very quiet and very controlled, in the way voices go, when a person is keeping themselves together by sheer force of will, "What did Vivian do?" Grizzly looked at Lily. She was watching him. Her face streaked with rain and tears, Charlotte's web pressed against her stomach. He turned slightly away from her, lowered his voice by half. "She left her on the side of the road, sir, in the rain, over some crayon drawings on a wall." He paused. "Your daughter also told us some other things, things that go back further than today. I think you need to hear all of it directly from her. But I want you to know today was not an isolated incident." Another silence, longer this time. And when Jack spoke again, something in him had shifted. You could hear it clearly even through the scratchy connection. A gear changing, something locking into place. The sound of a man transitioning from shock into the thing that comes after shock, which is not anger exactly but contains anger, the way a river contains current beneath the surface powering everything. "Where exactly are you?" "Give me the mile marker." Grizzly gave it to him. He heard the sound of a truck pulling over, an engine cutting off. "I am in Rollins," Jack said. "Wyoming." A pause, and Grizzly could picture him doing the math, calculating roads, calculating hours the way truckers always do, their minds already running the rate before the conversation is over. "That is 11 hours, maybe 10 if the weather clears, and I push it." "We will make sure she is somewhere safe for the night," Grizzly said. "The deputy here is going to arrange a temporary placement. She will be taking care of Mr. Dawson." "You have my word on that, your word." Jack said it like he was tasting it, deciding if he trusted the flavor of it. A truck driver in Wyoming being asked to trust the word of a man he had never met, a man from a brotherhood that most people crossed the street to avoid on the most important night of his life. Then, "Can I talk to her again?" Grizzly handed the phone back to Lily. She took it with steadier hands now. The worst of the crying had passed the way the worst of a storm passes. Not gone, but moved through. "Daddy, I am coming," Jack said. "I am already looking at the map. I am going to drive through the night, and I will be there before you wake up tomorrow." "Do you hear me? You do not have to drive all night." Lily Rose Dawson. His voice broke on her middle name but held. "There is not a single thing on this earth that is going to slow me down tonight. Not one, you understand." She understood. "Daddy," her voice dropped lower, not quite a whisper, but close. She took Mom's necklace. The bird one. I saw her wearing it. The silence that followed was the longest yet. The kind of silence that has rooms inside it. The kind you could walk through and find different kinds of pain in each one. "I know," Jack said finally. And the weight in those two words. The exhaustion, the grief, the guilt of a man who had not been home enough to see what was happening in his own house. That weight was enormous. It filled the phone line. It filled the highway. "I know, baby. I am sorry. I am so sorry I was not there." Lily wiped her face with the back of her hand. "It is okay, Daddy. It is not. But I am going to fix it. I promise you. I am going to fix it." She believed him. She had always believed him. That had never been the problem. The problem had never been her father's love. The problem had been his absence and the person who had filled it. She handed the phone back to Sully, who exchanged numbers with Jack and promised to stay in contact through the night. When he hung up, Sully slid the phone into his pocket and looked at Grizzly with an expression that said everything without saying anything. Grizzly nodded once. Deputy Harlan came back from his cruiser with a notepad and crouched in front of Lily again. Professional and gentle and very, very focused. "Lily, I need to ask you some questions. I need you to tell me everything you remember. Okay? Take your time. There is no rush." She nodded. She answered every question he asked, clearly in order, without exaggeration, without leaving anything out. What time Vivian had put her in the car. What they had argued about. Exactly what Vivian had said. Exactly what she had done. The deputy wrote it all down with the careful handwriting of a man who understood that what he was writing mattered, that these notes would become documents, and these documents would become evidence, and this evidence would become the difference between a woman's version of events and a child's. When he asked about other incidents, things that had happened at home before today, Lily was quiet for a moment. Not reluctant, just organizing. Arranging things in the correct order because the correct order mattered to her because she understood instinctively that truth is most powerful when it is precise. Then she told him about the necklace. She told him about the things Vivian said, the ones designed not to leave marks, the ones aimed at the soft places in a child that adults can find when they choose to look for them. She told him about the January night Vivian had locked the back door and she had been outside for 40 minutes in the cold. I told the neighbor I locked myself out, Lily said. I did not. I never locked the back door. Deputy Harlan's pen had slowed on the page. He was writing, but he was also listening in a different way now. The way you listen when something shifts from a bad situation into a documented one, from a story into a case. Behind Lily, old Ray said quietly to the man beside him, "She kept all of that inside her this whole time. Every bit of it." The man beside him did not answer. There was nothing to say that the rain was not already saying. Harlan finished his notes. He stood and spoke quietly to Grizzly for 2 minutes. Grizzly listened with his arms crossed and his face neutral, the face he wore when he was processing information and had not yet decided what to do with it. When Harlan walked back to his cruiser to make calls, Grizzly returned to Lily. "You did real well," he said. Telling him all of that, that took guts. She looked up at him. Is guts the same as brave near enough? She considered that. I did not feel brave. I felt scared. That is what brave is, Grizzly said. Feeling scared and doing the thing anyway. She seemed to file that alongside everything else she had filed away today. Then she said without transition, in the way children move from one serious thing to another without warning, "Are you going to get in trouble for stopping, for being late, wherever you were going?" Grizzly blinked. Of all the things he had expected her to say, "We were heading back from a memorial ride. Nobody is expecting us at a particular time." "A memorial ride," she repeated. "For who? A brother of ours. Lost him last year. We ride every autumn to remember him." She thought about this. What was his name? Wes Ryland. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I think Wes would have stopped too. If he were here, I think he would have been the first one off his bike." Grizzly was quiet for a long time after that. Then he said roughly, "Yeah, he would have." Something passed between them in that silence. Something about loss. About the specific way people who have lost someone recognize that same particular weight in someone else, even across the enormous distance of age and experience. It was not a thing either of them named. It was not a thing that needed naming. It simply existed between them, as real as the rain, as undeniable as the ground they were sitting on. That was when Harlan came back, and what he said changed the shape of the afternoon. "I reached Vivian Dawson," he said to Grizzly, keeping his voice low. "She is at home. She claims Lily got out of the car voluntarily. Says they pulled over because Lily was upset and Lily opened the door herself and refused to get back in." Grizzly stared at him. "She is also saying Lily has behavioral issues, that this is not the first time Lily has acted out." Grizzly's face did not change, but something behind it did. Something that rearranged itself from patience into something harder and colder and much more deliberate. "Deputy, I have 170 witnesses who found that child alone on a highway in a rainstorm. Not standing beside a car, not throwing a fit, sitting in the gravel, alone with a book, waiting." She was not performing, she was not acting out. She was waiting the way a child waits when they truly believe that someone might still come back for them. His voice stayed even, but the weight behind it was not even at all. "And that is the worst part of this whole thing, Deputy. She was still waiting for that woman to come back." Harlan held his gaze. "I hear you. I am documenting everything. Her father can speak to a family court attorney when he arrives. There is a family here in Garrison, good people. They have done emergency foster placement before. They have agreed to take Lily tonight. She will be safe. She will have a bed and a hot meal and someone with her." Grizzly looked back at Lily. She had picked up a beetle from the edge of the gravel and was watching it walk across her fingers with an expression of pure and complicated interest. The expression of a child who, even in the middle of the worst day of her life, could still find something worth her full attention in a small creature crossing her hand. He made a decision. "I am going to tell her," he said, "about what Vivian is saying. Not everything, not the details, But I will not let her hear it later from someone else and feel blindsided. She deserves better than that. Harlan gave a short nod. That is your call. Grizzly walked back to her. She set the beetle down carefully in the gravel and watched it go. He crouched beside her. Lily, I want to be straight with you about something, because I think you deserve that. She looked at him. Okay, your stepmother is telling the deputy a different version of what happened today. She is saying you got out of the car on your own. Lily's face went very still. The kind of still that comes before something the way the air goes still before a storm breaks. But what came was not a storm. It was something quieter and harder. I did not. I know you did not. She is lying. I know. Her jaw tightened. Not with tears. She was past tears for now. Something harder had taken their place. Something that looked in the face of an 8-year-old like the earliest visible form of a person deciding who they were going to be. Nobody is going to believe her, are they, Verpamang? Grizzly held her gaze. You told the truth. The deputy wrote it down. Your father is on his way, and there are 170 people standing on this road right now who know exactly what they saw when they came around that curve. He paused. The truth is on your side, Lily. It is going to stay there. She looked out at the rows of bikes, at the men standing there in the fading rain. Patient, unmoving. 170 men who had stopped their lives for a child they had never met and had not moved since. Why did they all stay? She asked. They do not know me. Grizzly thought about how to answer that. He thought about the right words and decided that the right words were just the true ones. Because some things he said you do not need to know a person to understand. She turned that over. Then she reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out Charlotte's Web. Damp at the corners, the cover slightly wrinkled from the rain. She held it against her chest the way she had been holding it all afternoon, like a hand she could hold when there were no other hands available. Okay, she said quietly, I trust you. And Grizzly, who had not cried in a very long time, found something in his chest, doing something it had not done in years. He stood up before it could show on his face. The Foster family's name was Prescott, Jean and Nora, a couple in their 60s who had a small house on the edge of Garrison, with a guest room that had a patchwork quilt on the bed and a lamp shaped like a lighthouse on the nightstand. Nora Prescott had fostered 11 children over the years, which meant she knew before Lily even walked through the door not to make a fuss, not to hug too hard, not to ask too many questions at once. She just took Lily's wet jacket, hung it by the heater, put a bowl of tomato soup in front of her, and sat across the table like she had nowhere else to be. Lily ate the soup. She did not say much. She did not need to. The soup was warm and the kitchen was dry, and the woman across the table had kind eyes and was not asking for anything. Before Grizzly had let Harlan's car pull away with Lily in the back seat, he had crouched at the window and looked at her directly. I'm going to call you tomorrow morning. Early. And your dad will be there before you wake up. I promise you that. He tapped the car door twice with his knuckle. You did good today. Every single part of it. Lily had pressed her hand flat against the glass. Not waving, not performing anything. Just making contact with something real. The way you reach for something solid when the ground has not fully stopped moving beneath you. Grizzly stood in the road and watched the cruiser until its taillights disappeared around the curve. Then he turned around and Sully was right there. What do you need? Sully asked. I need someone tracking Jack Dawson's drive. Call him every 2 hours. Make sure he is awake. Make sure he is moving. A man driving 11 hours through the night on that kind of news, someone needs to be checking on him. Sully nodded. I got it. And I need to know the minute Harlan files that report. Whatever charge, whatever outcome, I want to know. Done, Sully paused. Grizzly, what she said about the necklace, about Vivian wearing it, yeah. That is not a woman who made a mistake today. That is a woman who made a choice a long time ago. Grizzly said nothing. He did not need to. They both knew what it was. They had both been around long enough to know the difference between a person who lost their temper and a person who had decided quietly and deliberately that a child was not worth the space she took up. They mounted their bikes in silence. One by one, 170 engines started. The sound of it rolled out across the empty highway like a tide coming in, enormous and certain. Grizzly sat for a moment with his hands on the handlebars before he started his own engine. He thought about Lily pressing her palm against that car window. He thought about the way she had said, I trust you, not desperately, not as a child clinging to a stranger, but quietly with the same careful consideration she brought to everything, like she had weighed it and decided it was true. He started his engine. He rode. But he did not sleep that night. He lay on the motel bed in Garrison because he had not been about to put 300 miles between himself and this town, not tonight, and he stared at the ceiling and he thought about the things Lily had told Deputy Harlan. The locked door in January, the necklace, the words Vivian had said about Jack keeping Lily out of guilt, saying those things to an 8-year-old. He thought about his own daughter, grown now with kids of her own. He thought about what he would have done if anyone had said those things to her when she was 8. He examined that feeling for a while, turned it over, held it up to the light. Then he set it down carefully, because if he let himself sit inside it too long, it would turn into something he could not use. And Grizzly was a man who used things. He channeled them. He turned feeling into action, and action into result, and result into the thing that mattered, which was that the people he decided to protect stayed protected. At 2 in the morning, his phone buzzed. Sully, talk to Jack. He is in Billings, making good time. He sounds. Sully paused. He sounds like a man who is barely holding himself together. Is he safe to drive? He says he is. He pulled over for coffee. He asked about Lily. I told him everything we knew. He did not say much, just kept saying, okay, okay, like he was trying to absorb it all one piece at a time. He is going to fall apart when he sees her, Grizzly said. He is going to hold it together until he sees her, and then it is going to break. Yeah, probably. That is all right. That is what is supposed to happen. He hung up and lay back down, and this time eventually slept. And in his sleep, which was shallow and restless, and full of the kind of half-dreams that come when the body sleeps, but the mind does not fully agree to, he saw Wes Ryland. Not as he had been at the end, thin and gray in the hospital bed, but as he had been on the road, laughing, sunburned, alive in the way that only people who spend their lives in motion are alive. And in the dream, Wes looked at him and nodded once the way he always had, and Grizzly understood the nod to mean what it had always meant. You did right. At 4:47 in the morning, Jack Dawson knocked on the Prescott's front door. He had driven 10 hours and 50 minutes. He had stopped twice. Once for gas, once for coffee. The rest of the time he had simply moved because moving was the only thing his body knew how to do, with what was inside him. He had spent the first 2 hours on the phone. Sully, then the deputy, then his brother Kevin in Florida, then his mother in Billings, then Sully again. After that, he had turned everything off except the GPS and driven in silence and let the silence do what it needed to do. Nora Prescott answered the door before the second knock because she had been sitting in the kitchen since 3, unable to sleep, which was something she did not tell him. She took one look at Jack Dawson, unshaven, red-eyed, still in the clothes he had been wearing in Wyoming the morning before, and she stepped outside without a word. He walked in. Lily was asleep on the couch in the living room. Nora had moved her there around midnight when the girl had fallen asleep at the kitchen table mid-sentence, still telling Nora about the harmonica player and the beetle she had found and the man named Grizzly who had sat in the rain beside her like it was nothing. She was on her side. The patchwork quilt was pulled up to her chin. Charlotte's Web lay face down on the cushion beside her. Her blonde hair was still slightly damp at the ends from the rain. Jack stood in the doorway of that living room for a long moment. He did not go to her right away. He just looked at her. His daughter, breathing slowly, safe, whole. And something moved through him that was not quite relief and was not quite grief and was not quite rage, but contained pieces of all three held together by something older than any of them. Something that lived in the part of a man that knows beyond reason, beyond thought, that this person is his, and that he failed her, and that failing her is the one thing he was put on this earth not to do. He pressed the back of his hand against his mouth. His shoulders moved once, just once. Then he crossed the room and sat on the edge of the couch and put his hand very gently on the top of her head. Lily's eyes opened. She looked at him. She did not make a sound for 3 full seconds. The way you do not make a sound when what you are seeing is something you had stopped fully believing would happen. Then she sat up and went into his arms so fast she nearly knocked him off the couch, and he caught her, and he held her against his chest with both arms, and his face was pressed into her hair, and he did not say anything at all. Because there were no words built for this. for a father holding a daughter he had driven through the night to reach, a daughter who had sat alone in the rain and waited for anyone to see her. Lily cried. Jack cried. Nora Prescott, who had fostered 11 children and thought she was past being undone by moments like this, stood in the hallway with her hand over her mouth and her eyes closed. After a while, neither of them could have said how long. Lily pulled back slightly and looked at her father's face. She reached up and touched his jaw with her small hand the way she used to do when she was very small, checking that he was real. "You look terrible," she said. He laughed. A broken, exhausted, completely genuine laugh. "I drove all night, Bug. I know. You did not have to do that." "Yes, I did." She leaned back against him. He kept his arms around her. And outside the window, the first light of morning was beginning to change the color of the sky from black to the deep blue that comes just before dawn, the color that means the night is almost over, the color that means something new is about to begin. "Daddy." Lily set it into his shirt, her face pressed against his chest, her voice muffled but steady. Now the crying mostly past, replaced by something quieter and more deliberate. "I need to tell you everything. Not just what I told the deputy. Everything. The whole 2 years." Jack was quiet for a moment. His arms were still around her. His jaw tightened, but his voice when it came was steady. The voice of a man who had decided somewhere on the long dark highway between Wyoming and Montana that whatever came next, he would hold still for it. He would not flinch. He would not make it about himself. He would be the wall she needed him to be. "I know," he said, "and I want to hear it. Every word." A pause. "I am not going anywhere," she told him. It took an hour. Nora Prescott brought coffee for Jack and warm milk for Lily, and then made herself absent because what happened in that living room belonged to the two of them alone. She sat in the kitchen and looked at her hands and listened to the low murmur of voices from the other room and did not move until it was over. Lily told it all in the careful, sequential way she did everything, starting at the beginning, the week after the wedding. The first time Vivian had said something that made Lily feel like a wrong answer to a question nobody had asked. She told it without drama and without exaggeration and without the embellishments that most people add to their stories without even knowing they are doing it. She told it the way she had told the deputy, but with more. With the interior parts. The parts you do not tell a stranger in the rain. She told him about the nights she had lain awake constructing arguments in her own head for why Vivian was probably just stressed. Probably just adjusting. Probably did not mean it the way it sounded. She told him about the way she had learned to read the air in a room, the way other children learned to read books, scanning for the shift in temperature, the tightening of a jaw, the specific silence that meant something was about to happen. She told him about the way she had practiced being small, being quiet, being the kind of child who took up no space and caused no friction and disappeared so completely into the background that sometimes she was not sure she was there at all. She told him about the necklace. She told him about the night she had found Vivian wearing it, sitting in front of the mirror at 2 a.m, turning the little silver bird so it caught the light. She told him about standing in the dark hallway watching and not making a sound and going back to bed and lying there with the knowledge of it sitting on her chest like a stone. She told him about the locked door in January, about the 40 minutes in 14 below air, about the lies she had told Mrs. Pemberton, the neighbor, because she had calculated the cost of the truth and decided she could not afford it. She told him about the things Vivian said, the specific things, the ones that were designed not to leave marks, the ones that went to the soft places in a child impressed. Your father only kept you because he felt guilty. He would have moved on better without you. She recited them with the flat precision of someone reading from a list, because she had kept them in a list in her head, filed in the same careful way. She filed everything, and the list was long. Jack listened. He did not interrupt. He did not fill the pauses. He did not say, "I had no idea," or "I wish you had told me sooner," because those sentences, however true, would have made it about him. And this was not about him. This was about Lily. This was about the 2 years she had carried alone because the man who should have been carrying them with her had been in Wyoming or North Dakota or somewhere on a highway with his phone out of range and his daughter in a house with someone who had decided she was not worth the space she occupied. He held that knowledge about himself the same way you hold something hot, carefully, without looking away from it, without pretending it did not burn. When Lily finished, the sky through the Prescott's window had started its shift from black to the deep blue that comes just before dawn. I'm going to fix this, Jack said. You said that on the phone. I mean it more now. He looked at her directly. Vivian is not coming back into our house. Not for her things, not for anything, not while you are there. Do you understand me? Lily studied him. Are you going to get divorced? Yes. She processed this. The words settled into her the way facts always settled into her, without resistance, without drama, just finding the right place in the architecture of what she knew and locking into it. Good, she said simply. And then before Jack could respond, before he could say whatever he had been about to say about lawyers and courts and the machinery that was about to start turning, she said something that rearranged the room. Can we plant Mom's garden again? In the spring, Jack stared at his daughter. I know where she kept all her notes, Lily said, about what she planted and where. The little green notebook. It is in the box in the closet with her other things. I checked. It is still there. This child who had been left on a highway in the rain, who had sat in a rainstorm for over an hour alone, who had told her a story to strangers and deputies and a foster grandmother without falling apart. This child was asking about her mother's garden. Yeah, Jack said. His voice was rough. We will plant it. I want the purple ones. I cannot remember what they are called. Lavender? She repeated the word the way she always did, carefully, like something worth keeping in her mouth. Lavender. Okay, Grizzly called at 7:15 in the morning. Jack answered on the first ring. His voice was steadier now, still wrecked at the edges, but the particular hollow quality of a man running on fear had been replaced by something more solid, something with structure and direction. Mr. Dawson, Grizzly said. You made it. I made it. A pause. I do not. He stopped, started again. You stayed with my daughter, in the rain. All of you. You did not know her. You did not know me. You had no reason. We had every reason, Grizzly said. I want to meet you. In person. I want to shake your hand. Then we will make that happen. Grizzly paused. How is she? Jack looked across the Prescott's living room to where Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, telling Nora in patient detail about the correct way to press flowers between the pages of a heavy book. She was using hand gestures for emphasis. Her voice was calm and clear and instructional, the voice of a child who had decided that the morning was for teaching and that Nora Prescott needed to know about flower pressing. She is going to be okay, Jack said. She is stronger than most people I have ever met, Grizzly said. And I have met a lot of people. After he hung up, Grizzly sat with his phone in his hand for a while and thought about that, about the things that reveal what a person is made of. Not the big dramatic moments that people expect to define them, but the small interior ones. The decision to keep waiting when you have every reason to stop. The choice to tell the truth when lying would be easier. The ability to ask for help. Really ask, not perform it, when you are 8 years old and alone, and the sky is falling and a stranger is crouching down to meet your eyes. That was who Lily Dawson was. He hoped she knew it. He suspected she did not yet, not fully. That it would take years for her to understand what that afternoon had actually demonstrated about her own character. But she would get there. That afternoon, before Grizzly rode out of Garrison, he stopped at a gas station and bought the only stuffed animal they had. A large brown bear with a red ribbon around its neck, clearly intended for a much younger child, slightly lopsided, the kind of thing that had been sitting on a shelf for months, waiting for someone to take it home. He rode to the Prescott's house and knocked on the door. Lily answered it herself. She looked up at him, then at the bear, then back at him. She did not say anything cute about it. She did not perform surprise or gratitude. She just took it with both hands and held it the same way she had held Charlotte's Web against her chest, like something worth keeping. Thank you, she said. For all of it. Grizzly nodded once. He was about to say something. He had something prepared, something about things getting better from here, about being okay. But Lily spoke first. The man you did the memorial ride for, she said. What was his name? Wes Ryland? Lily nodded seriously. I think Wes would have liked me. I think we would have been friends. Grizzly stood on that doorstep for a moment, completely unable to speak. The words had landed in the exact place where he kept the memory of Wes Ryland, which was the place closest to the center of everything, and they had rearranged something there that he had thought was finished rearranging. Yeah, he managed finally. I think he would have loved you, kid. She seemed satisfied with that. She held the door open wider. Do you want to come in? Nora made pancake. There is a lot. He laughed. A real one startled out of him. The kind that felt good in the chest. Yeah, he said. Okay, he came in. He sat at Nora Prescott's kitchen table next to Lily Dawson. A biker and a small girl and a foster grandmother and a long-haul truck driver, all eating pancakes at 7:30 in the morning while the sun finally broke through the clouds outside the window and laid long gold stripes across the kitchen floor. And for a while there was nothing complicated about any of it. Just people around a table. Just breakfast. The pancakes were gone by 8. By 9, Jack Dawson had shaken Grizzly's hand at Nora Prescott's front door. A long handshake, the kind that happens between two men who have no common language, except the one that does not need words. Jack was not a demonstrative man. He had grown up in a family where you showed people you cared by showing up, by working, by staying. He did not hug easily. He did not emote in front of strangers. He hugged Grizzly anyway. Grizzly let him. He stood there on Nora's front step and let this exhausted truck driver hold on for a moment, and he did not say anything. And he did not pat him on the back the way you do when you are trying to signal that it is time to let go. He just stood there until Jack was ready. When Jack stepped back, his eyes were red, but his jaw was set. I am going to handle what comes next. The legal part, the divorce, all of it, Good Grizzly said. She is going to say Lily made it up. Vivian, she is going to build a whole story. She has already started. We know that, Grizzly said. The deputy knows that. And Jack, 170 people have already written statements. I made sure of that last night. Every man who was on that road wrote down exactly what he saw when we came around that curve. He let that land. She can say whatever she wants. She is saying it into a wall. Jack stared at him. You had them write statements. Last night, before anyone left Garrison. Sully organized it. Grizzly shrugged like it was an obvious thing, like it was nothing. Like 170 handwritten declarations were just what you did on a Tuesday night in October when you found a child alone in the rain. We have dealt with courts before. We know how this goes. You document everything or you lose the argument. Jack put his hand over his mouth for a moment, looked at the ground, looked back up. I do not know how to. I cannot. You do not have to, Grizzly said. Just take care of your daughter. That is the only thing you need to do from here. Lily appeared in the doorway behind her father, the stuffed bear tucked under one arm, Charlotte's web under the other. She looked at Grizzly. Are you leaving now? I need to get back, he said. But I told you I would call. You did. She stepped out onto the step beside her father. The morning was cold and clear. The storm entirely gone. The sky the specific blue that comes after rain in Montana, sharp and clean all the way to the mountains. She squinted into the light. Grizzly. Yeah, when you ride, when you go on trips with everyone. Do you ever come through Garrison again? He looked at her. We do. She nodded like she was confirming something she had already suspected. Then I will see you again. It was not a question. It was not a hope. It was simply a fact she had decided, stated in the same calm tone she used for all facts. Yeah, Lily, he said. You will. He walked to his bike. He started the engine. And before he pulled away, he looked back once at the door of that small house, at a man and his daughter standing side by side in the morning light. And he thought about Wes Ryland, who had been the kind of man who would have ridden at the front of that column and pulled over without hesitation, and sat in the gravel beside a strange child and never once considered doing anything else. He thought about how grief travels with you everywhere you ride, in the back of everything, the permanent passenger, but how sometimes the road puts something in your path that makes you understand why you are still on it. He rode. The legal proceedings began 11 days later, and they were not clean or simple because they never are. Vivian Dawson hired an attorney who was good at his job, which meant the first 6 weeks were a rotation of motions and counter-motions in a custody evaluation that required Lily to sit in a room with a court-appointed psychologist and answer questions for 2 hours while Jack waited outside in a hallway and tried not to put his fist through a wall. Jack had called Grizzly the night before the evaluation. He had not planned to. He had planned to handle it himself the way he handled everything, silently, with his jaw set and his hands occupied. But at 11 o'clock at night, sitting at the kitchen table with the custody paperwork spread in front of him, and the house too quiet, and the hallway too empty, and the photograph on the wall watching him with 163 pairs of eyes, he had picked up the phone. "She has to go in there tomorrow," Jack said. "Sit in a room with a stranger and talk about all of it again. Everything she already told the deputy. Everything she told me. She has to say it all over again to someone with a clipboard." Grizzly was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "She can do it. I know she can. That is not what I am afraid of." "What are you afraid of?" Jack was quiet for a long time. "That she will get so good at telling this story that it will stop hurting her. That she will learn to say it the way you say anything you have said too many times. And that the thing that makes her story powerful, which is that it is true and it comes from a real place, will get worn down by repetition until it sounds rehearsed." Grizzly considered this. "That is not going to happen," he said. "Not with her. She does not tell stories. She tells the truth, and the truth does not wear down. It just gets clearer." He was right. Lily handled the evaluation the way she handled everything. Directly, precisely, without embellishment. The psychologist, a woman named Dr. Bellamy, who had conducted hundreds of these evaluations over 20 years, told her supervisor afterward that she had never interviewed a child Lily's age who was so clear about the difference between what she knew and what she felt and what she could prove. She kept saying, "I do not want to exaggerate. I want to tell you exactly what happened," Dr. Bellamy said. 8 years old, the evaluator's report was 42 pages. Vivian's attorney challenged it. He filed motions questioning the methodology. He requested a second evaluation. He did everything a good attorney does when the facts are against his client, which is to slow the process down and make it expensive and hope that exhaustion produces compromise. That was when the statements arrived. Sully Baines had organized them with the same methodical attention he brought to everything. 170 signed declarations, each one describing what the writer had seen when they came around the bend of Highway 12 on that Tuesday afternoon in October. What the road had looked like, what the weather had been, how Lily had been positioned when they found her, how long they had been there, what she had said. The declarations were specific and factual, and they were identical in every detail that mattered. Because the truth is always consistent with itself in ways that fabrication is not. Fabrication requires memory. It requires coordination. It requires that every person telling the story remembers which version they agreed to tell. The truth requires none of those things. The truth is just what happened, and what happened does not change, no matter how many times you ask about it or how many people you ask. Vivian's attorney read the 170 declarations. He went quiet for 3 days. On the fourth day, he called Jack's attorney and began discussing terms. Jack was in the parking lot outside the attorney's office when he got the call. Afterward, he sat in his truck for 10 minutes doing nothing before he called Grizzly. "The charges are going through," Jack said. "Child abandonment. And there are 2 additional charges from what Lily told the deputy. Emotional abuse." The district attorney picked it up. Grizzly was quiet for a moment. "And the divorce. She is not contesting it anymore." Jack's voice had an unfamiliar quality. Not happy, not triumphant, just the flat, specific relief of someone who has been braced for a blow that finally did not come. "She wants it done. She wants to move to Bozeman. She wants it done quickly." And the necklace? A pause. That was the part that got her. Her own attorney advised her to return it. Apparently, once the abandonment charge attached her credibility on everything else went with it. It came back yesterday, in a padded envelope. No note. Grizzly said nothing. There was nothing to say about a woman who stole a dead mother's necklace from a child and returned it in a padded envelope without a note. There were no words built for the particular contempt that fact deserved. So he gave it silence instead. Which was better? "Lily does not know yet," Jack said. "I am going to give it to her tonight. I am going to put it around her neck myself." He stopped. His voice shifted in a way that suggested he was working hard to keep it level. "Megan would have, my wife would have. She would have been proud of Lily," Grizzly said, "and she would have been grateful to you for coming home." The silence on the line stretched long enough that it became its own kind of conversation. 2 men sitting in different places, holding different phones, carrying different versions of the same understanding. That some things are worth driving through the night for. That some things once broken can be put back together if you are willing to hold the pieces in place long enough. Grizzly Jack said finally. She asked me last night if you could come to her birthday. It is in March. Grizzly leaned back. He looked at the ceiling of his garage where he had taken the call, at the familiar grease-stained landscape of it, at the photograph tacked above the workbench. Wes Ryland, laughing sunburned, 17 years ago on a road in New Mexico. When in March the 14th, I will be there. She will want to know if the others are coming too. Grizzly smiled, a real one, slow and unhurried. I will ask around. He asked around. He sent one message to the chapter group at 9 that night. By 10:30, 163 men had responded yes. 4 were out of state and could not make the drive. 3 had work conflicts they tried unsuccessfully to reschedule. The remaining 163 cleared their calendars for the 14th of March without discussion, without deliberation, without anyone needing to explain why. On a Tuesday evening in February, Jack came to Lily's room. He sat on the edge of her bed. He had been sitting there for a full minute before she looked up from the book she was reading. She knew something was different. She could read rooms and she could read people, and she could read her father better than anyone, and something in the way he was sitting told her that what was about to happen was important. He held out the necklace in his palm without preamble. Lily looked at it for a long moment without touching it. The thin silver chain. The small silver bird in mid-flight wings spread caught at the precise moment of lifting off from something. The necklace her mother had fastened around her neck on her 5th birthday. The necklace she had worn every day until it was taken from her. The necklace she had seen around Vivian's neck at 2 in the morning in the glow of the living room lamp. She looked at her father. Her eyes moved from his face to his hand, to the necklace and back to his face, and in that circuit, something traveled through her that was too large and too complicated for a single emotion. It was grief and relief and anger and love, and the specific sharp joy of having something returned to you that you had been told was gone forever. How she said, it came back. She reached out and picked it up by the chain. She held the small silver bird up to the light from her bedside lamp and watched it turn, catching the light the way it had always caught the light, unchanged by everything that had happened to it and around it and because of it. Vivian had it, Lily said. I know. She lied about it. I know. Lily looked at him. Are you angry? Yes, Jack said, without hesitation. Because she was 9 years old and she had earned the truth, and he was not going to start giving her anything less now. She nodded slowly. Me too, but not the same as I was. She turned the necklace in her fingers. Can you put it on me? He fastened it around her neck with hands that were not quite steady, hands that had gripped a steering wheel for 11 hours through the dark, hands that had signed divorce papers and restraining orders and custody documents, hands that had failed to protect his daughter for 2 years and were trying now to do the one small thing they could do, which was to clasp a piece of silver around her neck and give her back something that had been taken. Lily went to the mirror on her closet door. She touched the bird with one finger. She stood there for a moment looking at herself wearing it, and in her reflection, she saw something that belonged to more than one time at once. She saw herself at 5, her mother fastening the clasp. She saw herself at 6, lying in bed in the dark, running her thumb over the bird's wings. She saw herself at 8, standing in the hallway watching Vivian wear it. She saw herself now. It fits, she said. Yeah, Jack said. It does. Lily Dawson turned 9 on a Saturday in March. She woke to the sound her father called the most beautiful and terrifying noise in Montana, which was the sound of 163 motorcycles coming up the road toward their house. The sound started as a distant hum, something you felt in the floorboards before you heard it in the air, and it grew the way it had grown on that afternoon on Highway 12, building from a vibration into a roar, into something that filled the sky and the earth and everything between them. She ran to the window in her pajamas. She pressed her face against the glass. She saw them coming, a river of chrome and black leather flowing up the road in the cold March sunlight. And she could not speak for a moment. Her mouth opened and nothing came out. Jack stood behind her with his coffee cup. Happy birthday, Bug. She turned around and looked at him with an expression he had never seen on her face before. Not the careful composure she had carried through the worst months. Not the practiced smallness she had developed under Vivian's roof. Not even the brave, deliberate openness she had shown a stranger in the rain. This was something unguarded and enormous. This was a child who had just been shown something unexpected about the world and had not yet had time to protect herself from how good it felt. They came, she said. They came. All of them, most of them. She turned back to the window. Then she turned back to him. Then she turned back to the window. Then she said in a voice that did not sound like the Lily who chose every word carefully, "I need to get dressed right now." Immediately, Jack laughed so hard he had to put down his coffee. Grizzly was at the front of the line. He brought a card. White envelope, simple card inside, but this one had 163 signatures in it because they had passed it around the night before at the motel in Garrison, where they had all stayed, and some of the signatures had notes beside them. Sully had written 3 words. Toughest kid, period. Dutch had drawn a small cartoon thermos next to his name. Colt, the harmonica player whose name Lily had eventually learned, had drawn a tiny harmonica. When Lily opened the card, she read every single signature, all 163. She sat at the kitchen table with her tongue pressed between her teeth in concentration, and she worked through them methodically, which took 11 minutes, during which approximately 8 bikers standing in Jack Dawson's living room found things on the ceiling to look at very intently. Then she looked up and said, "I know some of these people from last time." "Yeah," Grizzly said. "They remember you too." "Colt," she called across the room. He looked up, startled. "Do you still play?" He pulled the harmonica from his jacket before she had finished asking. Someone moved the furniture. Lily sat on the kitchen counter swinging her legs, and Colt played. And a room full of leather-clad men stood around a 9-year-old girl's kitchen and listened. The harmonica played something that was not exactly happy and not exactly sad, but was somewhere in between, in the specific territory where the most important music lives, the territory that understands that joy and grief are not opposites but neighbors, and that the wall between them is thin enough to hear through. Outside the window, a neighbor from 3 houses down stood in her yard with her phone in her hand recording. She would later upload the video to a local Facebook group with the caption, "Simply This Happened Today in Garrison." The video would be shared 11,000 times by Monday morning, but that came later. In the moment, there was only the kitchen and the music and the people in it, and Lily Dawson in her birthday sweater, yellow with small embroidered daisies along the collar, chosen specifically because it was the most festive thing she owned, with her mother's bird necklace around her neck, catching the light every time she moved. Grizzly stayed until late afternoon. He helped Jack move the furniture back. He washed dishes without being asked, standing at Nora Prescott's sink, because Nora had come to the party, because Nora came to everything now. She was simply part of what their life had become. She stood beside Grizzly, drying plates, and they talked about nothing important. Roads, weather, her grandkids in Missoula, his daughter in Billings. The comfortable talk of people who have been brought together by something large and stayed connected by something quieter. Lily found Grizzly in the kitchen before he left. She had been doing the rounds, saying goodbye to each person individually, because that was the kind of child she was, the kind who understood that each person who had come deserved to be seen leaving. She stood in front of him with the stuffed bear under her arm, the gas station bear, the one with the red ribbon. She had brought it out for the party and intended to keep bringing it out for every significant occasion. She had decided this. "Grizzly," she said. "Lily, I have been thinking about something." "What is that?" She looked up at him with those eyes that were always a little older than the rest of her eyes, that saw more than they should have had to see and understood more than they should have had to understand. "You stopped because you saw me, but you almost did not. I was small. I was far off the road. You could have just driven past." He thought about how to answer that honestly. "I saw something on the side of the road, and I slowed down. And when I got close enough, I saw it was a child alone, and then there was no question. But the slowing down part," she said, "that was the important part." He looked at her. "Most people do not slow down," she said. It was not self-pity. It was observation. The same precise, unsentimental way she observed everything. "Most cars went past me. 3 cars. And they did not slow down." She paused. "But you did. So I have been thinking that the most important thing is not what you do when you already know someone needs help. It is whether you slow down long enough to see it." Grizzly stood in Jack Dawson's kitchen on a Saturday in March and let a 9-year-old rearrange something in his chest. "That is right," he said. "That is exactly right." She seemed satisfied. She held out the stuffed bear. Will you hold him for the picture? Dad wants to take a picture of all of us before you leave. He took the bear. He held it with the same matter-of-fact care she had handed it over with. Jack came in with his phone and rounded everyone up. Grizzly and Lily and Sully and Colt and Dutch and Nora Prescott and 11 other bikers still finishing the last of the birthday cake. They crowded into the living room and someone propped the phone against a stack of books and set the timer and they took the picture. In it, Grizzly is in the center, enormous as ever. The red ribbon bear tucked under his arm. Lily stands directly beside him, one hand wrapped around 3 of his fingers. The bird necklace catching the light, her chin lifted, her eyes open and direct and unafraid. She is smiling. Not the careful private smile she had worn before. Not the compressed expression of a child managing the distance between what she feels and what she shows. A real one, wide and unguarded and entirely completely hers. Jack printed that photograph. He framed it. He hung it in the hallway in the exact spot where the crayon flowers had been. The flowers that started everything. The orange and yellow and pink garden Lily had drawn for her mother on a morning when she forgot just for a moment to be careful. He painted over those walls eventually. Fresh white. Clean start. But the photograph hung at the center of that wall, and whenever Lily walked past it, she touched the frame lightly with 2 fingers. The same way she had pressed her hand to the car window that rainy October afternoon. Not waving, not performing anything. Just making contact with something real. The legal proceedings concluded on a Thursday in late April. Vivian Dawson entered a guilty plea on 1 count of child abandonment and accepted a suspended sentence, probation, and a permanent protective order that kept her away from Lily and Jack permanently. The divorce was finalized the same week. Lily was not in the courtroom for the plea. Jack had offered her the choice and she had thought about it seriously the way she thought about everything. And she had said, "I do not think I need to see that. I already know what happened." Her attorney told Jack quietly afterward that it was one of the most emotionally healthy things he had heard a child say in 20 years of family law. She kept drawing flowers. She filled sketchbooks with them. Whole, wild, sprawling gardens that spilled off the edges of the Pages gardens, where the flowers were taller than the people walking through them, gardens that had no walls and no boundaries, and no one standing at the edge of them deciding what was allowed to grow. She wore the necklace to her first day back at school in November. Her teacher, Mrs. Calloway, noticed it immediately and said it was beautiful. And Lily said, "Thank you. My mom had it." And Mrs. Calloway said, "Your mom sounds like she had wonderful taste." And Lily said she did. She really did. She said it simply the way she said everything, without performance, without the need for anyone else to feel anything in particular about it. Just fact. Mrs. Calloway watched her walk back to her desk, and she thought about the note she had made in Lily's file months ago, the note about asking again, about watching more closely, about soon. She thought about how soon had turned into weeks and weeks into months, and how she had not asked again until it was too late to matter. She thought about how Lily had smiled and changed the subject, and she had almost believed her. Almost. She would carry that almost for a long time. She would carry it the way you carry anything that teaches you something important, about paying attention, about the cost, of almost about what happens in the space between noticing and acting. But Lily did not carry it. Lily had moved past it in the way that children sometimes do when they have been given enough solid ground to stand on. She did not blame Mrs. Calloway. She did not blame anyone except the person who deserved it, and even that blame she held lightly, the way you hold something you intend to set down eventually. Not today, not yet, but eventually. In March, she and her father planted the first seeds of Megan Dawson's garden along the south side of the house. They followed the notes Megan had kept in the small green notebook. What went where? How deep? How far apart? Which ones needed shade? Which ones turned toward the sun? Lily read the notes out loud in her mother's handwriting, translating the careful script into instructions, and Jack followed them the way he should have followed a lot of things. Carefully, attentively, present. It was a Saturday morning. The air was cold, but the sun was out and the ground had thawed enough to work. Jack dug the rows. Lily placed the seeds. They worked without speaking for long stretches, not because the silence was uncomfortable, but because it was not. It was the silence of 2 people doing something together that mattered to both of them, and neither of them needed to fill it with words. At one point, Lily stopped and looked at the strip of bare earth they were working in and said, "This is where the roses were." She pointed. And the marigolds were there, and the lavender was along the edge all the way to the corner. Jack looked at her. "You remember all that Mom's notebook has a diagram." "But I remember it too. I used to sit out here with her. I used to watch her work. She would tell me the names of everything while she planted like she was introducing me to them." She knelt back down and pressed a seed into the soil with her thumb. Lily knew the purple ones were lavender. She said the word carefully each time the way she always had, like something worth keeping in your mouth. Lavender. Like if she said it right, it would grow faster. Like the word itself was a kind of tending. By May, the first green things were pushing through the soil. Thin and tentative and so small that you had to crouch down to see them, but there. Alive. Growing in the exact places Megan's notebook said they would. The roses would take longer. The marigolds were already showing color. And the lavender, which Lily checked every morning before school, had sent up two small green shoots that she guarded with the fierce, quiet attention of a person who understands that some things need time and patience and the willingness to show up every day and look. Lily crouched in the garden on a Saturday morning, her hands in the dirt, her necklace swinging forward as she leaned down to look. She stayed like that for a long time, just watching the new plants, just being there with them. Unhurried and present and at home in a way that had nothing to do with walls or roofs or whose name was on the deed. At home in the way you are at home when you are doing something that connects you to someone you love, someone who is not there anymore, but who left behind a notebook and a garden and a necklace and a daughter who remembers every flower by name. She was 9 years old. She had been abandoned by one person and found by 170 others. She had lost her mother and kept her close anyway in flowers and photographs, and the small silver bird resting against her collarbone. She had been told she was a problem and had discovered she was a person, fully, stubbornly, unquestionably a person. And she had told the truth in a rainstorm to strangers who listened, and the truth had held, and she had held, and the world had turned out to contain more people worth trusting than she had been led to believe. She pressed both hands flat into the earth beside the new lavender, feeling the cold and the damp, and the particular solidity of ground that is ready to grow something. She looked up at the sky. It was enormous and blue and entirely clear, the kind of sky that comes after rain in Montana, the kind that makes you feel like you can see all the way to the edge of the world. Some people are abandoned, some people are found, and some rare, fierce, quiet people, even at 8 years old, even in the rain, even alone, refuse to stop believing that the road will not stay empty forever. Lily Dawson was always going to be one of those people. She just needed someone to slow down long enough to show her she was right. And somewhere on a highway in Montana, a man on a motorcycle rides through the autumn air with the memory of a small hand wrapped around 3 of his fingers, and he carries that memory the way he carries everything quietly close to the center, in the place where the things that matter most are kept. And when he comes around a curve in the road and sees something on the shoulder, anything at all, he slows down. He always slows down now. Because a 9-year-old girl in a yellow sweater taught him that the most important thing is not what you do when you already know someone needs help. It is whether you slow down long enough to see it. He slows down every time.